A kid is shown who wants his mother to read him an adventurer book, Zario's, the Sword Saint. He used to look up to such adventurers until his parents died because their death was a tragedy. His mother died from the demonic beast that overflowed from demonic labyrinth, and not a single adventurer tried to save her, and his father got murdered because he had a magic tool that cost no more than tens of thousands of themis. He was disappointed because current heroes did not have dignity as that of Zario's, and that's when he decided to become a stronger hero like Zario's. Now that kid is grown up and goes by the name Dean. He is on an expedition with some guys and is acting as a carrier in the job. They ask him to run even though he is carrying heavy luggage over his back. They even poke fun at him to throw his heavy magic sword to run faster. He considers it the worst job, and that's why other carriers have some non-combatant job beside it, but he has got nothing. His magic sword, which is also known as the Sword of Poor Pop, can't use any decent magic. The only magic he can use is lighting his surroundings, torch, but he has limited mana, so he is using an expensive lamp. He has another magic called him that anyone can use though to check others' status. Worst of all, he is below average in all capabilities and is a carrier of level 8. They are leading ahead in a labyrinth where a man named Morgan cannot sense moose ahead, and Dean observes his surroundings that there are no flyings either. They move ahead and surprisingly see a dead moose corpse, and a man named Gilbert asks Dean that it's time for him to shine. He has to look up the corpse and check if the fight bone is still there. It is present in all animals and lets them convert life force, Odo, into fighting strength. This bone can help people fetch a high price as a material for magic tools. At a glance, Dean can tell there is no fight bone, but Gilbert rudely asks him to cut through Moose's body and search it because it would be sold in around 4,000 Timmy's currency. Dean carries a dagger and pierces through Moose, thinking he understands why they want to get bone, but if he finds one by all his efforts, it will go in their pockets, so they should do it. He lets them see that there is one tailbone broken and the fight bone is missing. Gilbert, who forced Dean to look into dead moose, says he did not expect to get one here. He is planning to hunt 4 moose one by one. Dean lags to clean his blooded hands, and Gilbert yells at him to speed up, otherwise he will cut off the pay. Dean stops them to ask what they think about who killed this moose, even though it is the strongest creature on the 3rd level. There are usually flyings roaming around the labyrinth, but strangely they don't see any today. Gilbert cannot listen to wise thoughts coming out of Dean and calls them bullshit. It might be cannibalism, but Dean loudly says moose usually don't eat each other. Gilbert comes close to Dean, yelling that it's possible that their prey is gone due to some plague and flyings must also be eaten by them. If they return now, they might break from the travel cost and preparation time. Dean does not need to think their money is endless because it's not his, and if can't compensate for their money, then he has to shut his mouth. They go ahead and listen to a moose having its lunch. Gilbert and Morgan are full of themselves and get prepared to hunt the moose. Dean brings the light, but shockingly, there is not just one moose but 8 of these huge-sized horrific creatures eating their own kind. Those moose surround them and they have no courage to hunt. Gilbert thinks of the idea of making Dean a decoy and says in a cringe way, "Die for me." After saying it, he kicks Dean out and they run to the other side. Now Dean is surrounded by those huge moose and somehow dodges their direct hits. He knows he cannot fight them, but thinks Zario's will not give up in such a situation. He illuminates his sword and observes they got scared. He can take this chance, but a moose hits him from the back, and now he is injured and in heavy pain. He wants to calm down and think of a way to get out of here, but sees those moose growling next to him. He is scared to death and can't think of anything else. He leans against a wall and swings his sword to scare those moose, but in vain. Fortunately, his back wall breaks down and he falls underground. His body is in pain and his throat is parched and can see light coming from ahead. He goes there dragging and sees there is a globe shining brightly enough to light up the cave. He does not know what it is and picks it up. Dean wonders if it's the demon core. He can tell it because his sword has a demon core of F rank and the one in his hand is on another level. He uses him to check its status, but he can see just demonic encrypted statements, which makes his head throbbing hard in pain. He is terrified and gets even more when he listens to core speaking. He throws the core far, but it says him to handle it carefully. It is Beelzebub Duergadigigos, pillar of gluttony, also king of 7 deadly sins known in the demon world Orsal. Dean doubts what he heard because a long time ago there was a battle between the divine god Mazra and the demonic lord, Manra, and the world was split into 2. This world is Illumina and the other is the demonic world Orgal. A barrier was created between the 2 worlds to avoid the entry of demons into this world, and the barrier's power is proportional to the rank of demons, which made it difficult for the powerful demons to cross. In the last 1,000 years, there have not been that many demons who crossed over the barrier, and for an S-tier demon like Beelzebub, it's quite impossible to cross the barrier. Demon proudly says that Dean finally acknowledges his majesty and wants him to bend before him for forgiveness. But Dean runs to the other side in terror. Demon shouts that he is still a demon core who has been lying here for 100 years. Only rats have come here who rub their butts on the core, so he does not know when the next human comes and wants to reconsider his request. Dean is a compassionate human and comes back to the core to ask the reason why the king of 7 deadly sins is lurking here. Beelzebub tells him that he is lost in the power struggle. He had no interest, to begin with, but the other sins conspired against him and set a trap out of fear. He knows why they had fear of him, because he had strength enough to slaughter all of them single-handedly. They meticulously plotted a murder and he couldn't fight back in such a situation. His body despised but his core remained. It was nearly impossible, but he was not a normal demon. He thought he could easily cross the barrier with core, but he had to use some trick and force to get there. He brags that it was an elementary school challenge but makes a fool of himself that Dean thinks the demon is reliant now on a human. They have to get out of here, but the problem is that Dean cannot beat those moves. Demon hops on the ground and says if he was in his prime he could beat those moves with his fingers. Dean wants Beelzebub to lend his power, but in turn, he asks him if he can use Tulpa, Pachidamorti, which is a method of spiritification where the demon is used as an intermediary for transforming into a spirit. It's only an E-rank magic, and the only downside is that D-tier and higher rank demons cannot release their full powers. But Dean has not been able to use any magic other than a torch and won't be able to learn this technique. So Beelzebub decides to teach him this technique, and since he is the core with ego, there is no need for a magical device. Dean does not know if he can trust the demon and control him in his spiritification, but agrees to consider this method. Demon is excited because he won't have to spend his life as a pebble and will be one step closer to being whole. Dean casually asks him if he can't enjoy outside as a pebble, but the word pebble gets on the demon's nerves, who hits his face directly. Dean's training begins, and the first step of Tulpa is to summon a chick, but Dean is so powerless that a day passes without fruitful results. He is starved, and to procure food, he gets out of the cave to fetch his bag where Moose cornered him. The bag has Gilbert's and Morgan's belongings, but Moose have crushed them. He breaks down other items because if he crushes them, no one would know whose belongings are these and would be sold in 1 lakh Timmys. Dean is ashamed of stealing, but he has come to it because he needs money. He yet has to give back 10,000 Timmys to his best friend, Monty lent him. Just when he was going to earn this amount, the moose went wild and ruined his earnings. He brings the bag back to the cave and searches for edibles. There is just an Oni goat's stomach left, which is a water reservoir and has paint on it. That's why Moose did not like it and left. He is about to make soup using some mushrooms, goblin rome. Beelzebub does not know about them, so Dean tells him the method of performing actions. He fries the mushrooms first, then boil them in water, which creates a delicious stock. When made, he puts 1 mushroom in a spoon and Beelzebub starts drooling to see it. Dean throws them away because they are poisonous, but their soup is close to Moscow meat. It has a faint taste of sugar and a bit of thickness to it. After making stock, he puts bottom mo on top and then adds salt for taste. The soup is complete and seems mouth-watering. Beelzebub wants to taste it but cannot due to its core-like body. Dean takes a sip and finds the soup so delicious. The thick, gentle-tasting goblin rome fills his mouth, and bottom moa gives a great scent, making it more edible. Above all that, he can enjoy having soup in such a cruel condition. Beelzebub finds it so refreshing and fascinating and recalls in the demon world, everyone ate tasteless foods. He is excited to get into spirit form and get a treat of soup from Dean. It makes Dean wonder if he is really king of the 7 deadly sins. Later, they begin their training of Tulpa, and this time he becomes able to summon 1 chick spirit on the first day because he is full of energy. This training is the basics of basics, but it gives him hope and a sense of accomplishment. Few people in the world can use Tulpa, and he is lucky to have such a great teacher for training. On the next day, he succeeds in summoning Nyalyamu as the second step of training. Nyalyamu has soft, soothing furs. On the third day, he does not proceed fairly enough, so he roasts the Oni goat's stomach, adds salt, and eats it. The third step is to learn E-tier magic Pachidamorti, but it does not go well because it requires a lot of struggle. On the 4th day, he panics because he has not learned anything and has run out of food. To activate magic, 3 criteria must be fulfilled. First is imagining the magic formula, next is creating the phenomenon in the imagination, and lastly, altering his Odo into the necessary type of Magicka. Dean understands why he is not able to master it. It requires recreating the phenomenon in his imagination, which is in his case defeating Moose, and is not an easy task. While exercising, he plans to get more goblin roam outside to fill his belly and come outside. When he is collecting those mushrooms, suddenly Beelzebub notifies him that Moose is approaching really fast. Dean looks back and is frozen in place. He cannot get back to Hole either because he is blocked. It is where he has to settle things but is terrified to the point where his head fills with useless thoughts. He is carrying a demon core who tells him to believe in his power, so he puts the core in front of those monsters with the intention that he will get out of there alive. Dean is determined to use his newly learned skill, Puchidimority, and activates it. A magical circle appears from where Beelzebub comes out. It turns out to be a girl who lands on the ground saying she will finally be able to berserk after a long time. When she is in a hot mood, Dean interrupts her surprisingly to inquire her if she is a little girl, but it prompts her. She yells at him how dare he says her a little girl, she is the ultimate demon. When they are arguing, Moose approaches them to strike but Beelzebub blocks it using her bare hands. Blood drips out of her hands due to injury because her body is frail due to her temporary form. Well, it is sufficient for her to land a strong hit on Moose and she makes him fly against the wall behind. She wants to take more action but Dean has had enough of consuming his energy. He does not have enough magicka and can't maintain Puchidimority for long. He has a plan that their objective is to break through, not drive them away. She will keep Moose busy while he will rush to the exit. She asks him to believe her power and then turns to Moose making a horrifying face. They have to bring on a once-in-a-lifetime chance to exchange fists with her. Moose are also brimming with their hostile rage and two of them plunge towards her to attack. Dean is observing it and thinks she won't be able to handle both of them, but unexpectedly she jumps forward. She has a slim and flexible body and dodges their attack meticulously. They strike her again and this time she jumps high and then kicks them hard, saying they are inferior creatures. Dean is sitting against the wall and finds her strong, but whenever she moves, he feels dizzy as if he is gonna lose consciousness. While she is keeping those moves by, he swiftly moves to the other side, but to his surprise, another moose is waiting for him. It is about to attack him. Dean covers his eyes instead of dodging and Beelzebub appears and cuts off its monster's hand. She asks him not to space out and run. When he runs out of place, she becomes serious and knows Moose's weakness is their fight bone, which converts the life energy into fighting power. She has a strong body and lands a strong hit at the center of Moose. She is a maniac with a horrific smile and enjoying the annihilation of the moose one by one. But other moose get terrified of her killing style and run with their tails between their legs. She can see her hands disappearing as her time is gonna be up, and now that left is enjoying Illuma's cuisine. Dean runs off to the exit of Labyrinth and Beelzebub follows him. She has turned back to her core form. He cannot believe she took on all of the moose and learned she dealt with some and others cramped off. He says if he dealt with those moves by himself he would have taken years to train. But she asks him to check his own status and he is surprised to see his rank has increased up to 13th. She tells him that defeated Moose's Odo went to him. He can't believe it because it took 1 year for him to increase just one level. Gilbert and Morgan are out of reach, but he can live his life as a normal adventurer and won't have to suffer as a courier anymore. He stands up to get back city to meet Monty as she might be worrying for him. Beelzebub does not know who she is, so he tells her that Monty is her only best friend and if he never met her he would have been dead already by now. She is always watching his back and she is the one who forged his sword after all. She is the granddaughter of the legendary swordsmith, Gavin. 2 days later, they arrive at the city where Monty is, but Beelzebub is surprised to see the place because it's such a desolate place and wonders if Monty lives here. He tells her the reason that Gavin loves gambling, which is common in this area. They are standing before a shop that says it's closed, but he can listen to sounds coming from there. He knocks on the door and listens to Monty saying the shop is closed for the time being. But when he tells her that it is Dean outside, she hurriedly opens the gate. She is a short-haired, busted girl. She cannot believe it's him and embraces him with teary eyes. When she did not see him for days, she went to the guild to check up on him and then learned his death was reported. She could not bring herself to think she wouldn't see him anymore. Currently, she is telling him all by embracing him and crying. He apologizes to her for making her worry. Beelzebub interrupts their romantic moment and says it's the hot relationship between them and if they are intimately involved. They both pull away from each other and are flushing red. Dean is carrying the core in a bag and says she is just his childhood friend. Monty looks at the core and asks him what it is. They get into the shop where he apologizes to Monty for dropping her hand-forged sword. She does not mind and appreciates he managed to get out of the moose trap safely without a magical sword. He says it's thanks to Beelzebub core that he got saved. Mani is about to touch the core, and Beelzebub asks her not to touch her casually. He continues that he got to meet Core in the labyrinth and apparently she is the king of 7 deadly sins. Her power is not a joke, he saw it with his own eyes when he used Talpa. Mani becomes serious and asks him what he is going to do with Demon Core from now on. If the army learns of it he won't get away safely, even the soldiers and adventurers won't leave him alone. The tier of magical device one possesses is akin to his social status. Mani hesitantly continues that he will need to worry about Magus Officer Malti who controls all of Romanbliek. She also has heard that man is involved in many atrocious inhuman activities. She doesn't know what will happen if that man hears about this. Dean tries to speak but Core cuts him off saying hold it and asks what army he is speaking of. Dean asks her in return if there is no army in Orgol. Mani starts telling her that the army is this country's defense organization. The army's duties include warding off other countries, quelling riots, and managing demonic beasts and demons. There are 4 judicial in the country and are controlled by the Magus General. Core says whoever targets her, even its army, she would annihilate them. Dean tells her that everyone in the army is above level 25 and there are thousands of them. Core asks if he is uneasy because of his meager quantity of magicka. All they have to do is make that grow, but Dean says that's not a viable solution. Mani observes them getting engaged in conversation and feels somehow jealous. Mani, after deep thinking, becomes serious and says to Dean that she has a proposition and asks why don't sell it as an item drop. She estimates he should get at least 30 lakh temmies. Core jumps with anger. How could she say that to a demon? Dean is also indebted. She finds it broad and detestable. Meanwhile, Dean is lost in some thoughts of accepting Mani's idea. Beelzebub asks him if he is thinking something deplorable against her. Dean just says his 4 months of work and suddenly she punches Dean's face so hard. She yells at him that he was looking up to be an adventurer and how it would be one when she is gone. He had also made a promise that he would treat him to the delicious cuisine of the Lumas. Dean comes to his senses back and asks her to let him take time to think for a bit. He apologizes to Mani for not considering her opinion. He owes to Beelzebub for saving his life. Mani also does not mind. She will cheer him on whatever he decides and he can come to her for advice. She is also pretty reliable. He goes to Adventurer Guild taking Beelzebub with him. He has to reverse his death report, otherwise it will cause problems for him. He goes to reception and asks for his request for a death report retraction. Receptionist seems defiant but unwillingly goes to check it. He listens to Gilbert sitting across the table with someone talking about his expedition and mocking Dean. He says they never thought they would be attacked by moose on the 2nd floor. That other man asks if it was not better for Dean if he had not tagged along with them. Gilbert laughs at Dean that he insisted on going with them, and when they faced moose, he tried to save Dean but he acted on his own until the very end. Gilbert brags about his skills that when he was 13 he was a respectable adventurer, but Dean is 17 and still useless. He laughs creepily saying that Dean was never fit to be an adventurer and should have stayed with his parents. It prompts Dean severely and he rudely asks them to shut their mouth. He was almost dead because of them. It leaves Gilbert's mouth dead open with shock that Dean is standing before him. Dean shouts that he was going to die, all thanks to Gilbert, who used him as bait and run off with his legs between his legs. The person who was just with Gilbert is listening and asks him that he was just saying he covered for Dean, but it seems the story is different. Gilbert holds Dean's shoulders and changes his attitude to crying and playing things off. He makes everyone aware that Dean made it alive by himself and then puts his arm around Dean's neck hardly to the point of choking it. They go to a nearby tavern where he requests ogre chicken pie and lick fish meunier for 2 and says to Dean that he can order whatever he likes as Gilbert has reserved this tavern for tonight. Dean cannot understand what Gilbert is doing and asks him what he is up to. Gilbert says it would be troublesome for him if the news of using Dean as a decoy or courier were spread and they should act as adults. Even all 3 of them got saved and are alive. Dean is not satisfied with his reasoning and furiously holds Gilbert's shirt. Gilbert says he has a strong influence over the guild. If Dean spreads the news about him, then he will bring his own story to suppress Dean's claims. Gilbert even knows about Mani and it will bring trouble for her too. It would be nice for them to leave this incident behind and act as adults. Dean is so frustrated but suppresses his emotions and calls the past incident an accident. In exchange, he shouts at Gilbert not to interfere in his matters. Dean comes outside where Beelzebub says he should not have acted on cheap provocations and enjoyed a meal Gilbert treated. Dean also regrets his actions. For his self-pride and childish acts, he lost his job as a carrier and much more in just a moment. Gilbert even might set a grudge against him. While crying, he asks Beelzebub to lend him strength to become an adventurer. Beelzebub does not have a problem, they both will be in trouble, so he has to learn high-level tulpa. On another note, she does not dislike weak people like him. He goes to Mani and bends before her for a request. He can't pay her immediately but wants her to forge a sword using Beelzebub's core. It might even be troublesome for her, so she can decline his request. She asks Beelzebub if she is satisfied with it, and Beelzebub says she proposed this idea. She can't do anything in this form, and being a magical sword would be interesting. Mani is not sure because normally a standalone core can't become a manifest magic, and Beelzebub is a demon core with an ego. She might become a pseudo-magical device but might not do her job effectively. Mani has also suspicions about her skills. She has never processed a high-level magic core. Dean holds her hands, saying it cannot be anyone but her who can do it. She is the granddaughter of legendary swordsmith and should not let other swordsmiths outdo her. She flushes and plays with her hair, wondering what she will do, and then changes her tone to say he has not even her previous charges yet. Then she comes to her normal mood and says she was joking. She will cheer him on onwards. However, she can't use materials that will bring the true power of Beelzebub and can make a makeshift device. The next day, Dean moves around the town to sell Gilbert's magical device and less worthy things and gets around 80k temmies. Mani agreed to forge him a sword without any charges, but he does not want to burden her. He brings the earned cash to Mani, who asks him in return if he did any unnecessary things. She makes pout to say he should have instead said he would pay her back 100-fold, or he would make a promise to make her happy. He exposes the truth that he sold off the money of his previous companion, and he is the same guy who pushed him off as the bait. She is shocked to hear that he was almost murdered, and he calms her down. He has set matters with him, and there even now, he does not want to get involved with him anymore. She is relaxed and does not want to say anymore, but her rage can be shown on her face. She says her stomach churns when she thinks the one who tried to eliminate him is doing as he pleases. The next day, we see Dean bringing the edibles for Mani and working as her attendant. He enters the shop where Mani is surprisingly done with forging his sword. The metal she used is popular among adventurers, black iron, and the fight bone belongs to the Tusk Wolfong. Thanks to his 80k temmies, she got her hand on D-tier materials. However, she is still uneasy because she is not sure if Beelzebub can bring out her original power. Dean carries his sword to see the sword's status. It is named the Sword of Gluttony and has amazing characteristics. It consumes the abilities of those it slays. Mani thinks he did not like this sword and offers she can remake it, but Dean is encouraged and says he will show her he can be an adventurer with this sword. Dean is making dishes and asks Mani to set a table for them. She agrees with saying they are doing things as if they are married. It makes him flush with embarrassment. Dean has made the dish, boiled white fish and matto soup. Beelzebub is in her spirit form and the dish looks so appetizing to her. She takes a bite from her and indulges in his savory taste. Then she snatches the whole pot and drinks in one gulp. She is thrilled to get its taste and says to Dean that he can do it if he tries, but she has incurred Dean's rage, who is resisting to take action. She cutely asks him for seconds and it forces Dean to carry action. He hits her with a sword to release her spirit form and she turns back to be a demon core. Her aftertaste of the dish has also disappeared. Mani goes to check sunrise and there is still time for him to breakfast before going to the Adventurers Guild. Dean arrives at Guild with Mani following him. She also wants to check her hand-forged sword performance. Besides that, he has a combat role and he might need a porter. He thanks her and leaves the equipment to her. They plan where they should go for sword checking and have a map where place Romanbluic underground ruins are marked. They might face D-rank monsters there. She informs him she heard a rumor about that place and whispers that it is said a golden magical snail gold Mai has appeared. It is a strange monster with a golden luster. It is difficult to hunt because it moves fast and if caught, it has tremendous odo, and its shell is highly valuable. Beelzebub asks them to leave it to her as she will get it in one strike. They set on their first adventure and reach on summit of ruins, but they are tired even though they rested on the way and it took them half a day to reach there. There are stairs in front that lead to the first floor, and it is said snail is found on the second or third floor. There are no noteworthy monsters on the first floor and no one dares to go on the fourth floor, so they decide to start from the second floor. They get on the second floor and are reminded that their primary goal is to check sword performance and snail lies on secondary. Suddenly they hear someone roaming there and then in light, they see a skeleton, known as Bone Man White, coming there. Dean gets Mani back and checks skeleton status, which says he is at level 15 and its odo is low. He says it is the ordinary Bone Man and can deal with his current status, but Beelzebub asks him not to underestimate his opponents. Low-tier demonic beasts have no intelligence, that's why they are hostile, no bluffs, and begging for life can work before them. If serious, he can resort to her spiritification. Dean moves forward to swing his sword, but Skeleton blocks this attack. Dean looks at Skeleton that has blood on it, which means it has killed another person already. Beelzebub asks him to make some distance so he gets back. He is terrified because facing a demonic beast is not a simple task, but it makes him happy to fight as an adventurer. He plunges forward again and strikes Skeleton's side. He is about to say he did it, but in a second Skeleton moves around with one side crumbled and strikes Dean. He somehow blocks and pushes away. He thinks he took the skeleton too lightly. It moves swiftly because it could not feel pain. He observes the skeleton's parts to find the opening, but there are challenges from every point. He does not know what he should do next. He remembers the ability of the Sword of Gluttony that absorbs the powers of those she slays. Mani is about to draw its attention, but Dean makes her stop. If he is going to be an adventurer, then he won't need assistance. He runs to Skeleton and gives a fatal blow. It seems he has taken over Skeleton, but it still tries to stand on. However, Dean is confident and says the match is settled. Whites don't have 5 senses, but in return, they can detect Odo around them. With the last blow, he stole Odo's sensing ability from the skeleton using his sword's ability, and he can feel the presence of life forces around him. He is not a porter anymore but an adventurer, and by saying it, he gives Skeleton a final blow. Dean has achieved his first win, and Mani appreciates that he did it. He denies and gives credit to the efforts of all of them. Later, Mani carries the sword and she somehow starts believing the insane ability of the sword after seeing it with her own eyes. Dean is collecting the fight bone, and if he sells it in good condition then he will receive 5k Timmies, which is worth 5 days of food. Mani gets up to go into deep parts of the labyrinth but turns to Dean and sees he is collecting other parts of the skeleton which are worthy of 50 Timmies total. She says that frontline adventurers don't do that part, and he comes to his senses. They advance further and there is a path divided. Mani decides to go straight, but Dean asks her to go left because he can sense a Drake monster. She is surprised to see he is using the special ability he got from a skeleton, which is just like a rule search. Search finds the locations of nearby monsters. The users of this ability are rare and are recruited by the army easily. This Odo sensor can also be called a pseudo-search, but it has low Odo consumption, and with it, he can be a portar easily. They go on a path ahead, avoiding goblins on their way. Suddenly, he senses a strong Odo coming from behind and learns it's the golden snail. She is moving at high speed. Mani blocks her way, but she is pushed away due to force. Dean hits Snail with his sword, but she is slimy and slides away. When Dean is sulking over a missing hit on a snail, Mani tells him that he did hit it. There is a mark on the ground where he hit the snail, and it's all sloppy due to the liquid of the snail. Dean wonders if his slash was not shallow. Beelzebub adds her opinion that a snail has an ability that allows it to pass the hit through her body without being beaten up. Dean can sense the presence of fellow adventurers who also aim to hit the snail, and he does not want to meet them. Later, he first considers they are from the army and one of them has search ability, but thinks that it would be effective for them to search for the Mai at the 4th level. So then he concludes they are fellow adventurers and finds it ridiculous that they went to 3rd level with Mai. He firms his resolve and remembers what Zarios would have done in such a situation. He plans to go to the 3rd level as he knows how it attacks and has Puchidamority, which will allow him to fight evenly. They reach the 3rd level and can see adventurers sitting up ahead. It turns out to be Morgan sitting there, who is surprised to see Dean alive. There is another one, which is a cat beast folk, Carol, who has bandages over his body and is bleeding. Dean readily asks Mani to stop bleeding. Carol is not even registered in the guild. While crying, he says it's because of his weakness. Morgan and Gilbert are in such a condition. Morgan is about to hit Carol that it's because of him it's happening. Dean looks at him menacingly, which creates a terror in Morgan. Dean tells Carol that these people treat Potars as slaves, and when they are pinched, they leave Portar behind to die. Even if he is in poverty, then he does not need to accept requests from such people. Carol wipes his eyes and says he willingly accepted this offer because they promised to make him an adventurer. Morgan laughs hysterically to say Gilbert will win over Mai and Dean Wimp won't get anything. Dean gets up and declares Mai is his to get. Carol seems impressed by Dean's chivalry. Gilbert is running after Mai and has finally cornered her. He uses his skill, Illusion on Snail, but it does not affect her and she jumps to hit him on his back. Dean and Mani also come here running, and Dean asks him to stay away as she is dangerous. Gilbert does not heed anything Dean says and wants to get his hands on Snail first than Dean. He is about to use his ultimate skill using his sword and swinging it towards the snail, and that's when a huge-sized hobgoblin appears with its small minions. Gilbert has lost power in his legs and turns to Dean. He loses his dignity and begs help from Dean. Monty holds his arm and asks him to run. Gilbert is getting what he deserves for betraying him and for cruel behavior with Carol. Dean uses his skill to look into Monster's status and finds they are too powerful to handle. Monty stops him from saving Gilbert, but Dean remembers about the heroic acts of Zario's. Goblin is about to hit Gilbert, but Dean comes into action and blocks the attack. He asks Gilbert to run and never show his face again. He is pissed that Gilbert made him do unnecessary things, although no one would blame him except himself. But he has decided now he would live life like Zario's, without being ashamed of the path he has chosen. A huge hand of Goblin is coming towards Dean, then heroically uses his skill, Puchidamorty, and Beelzebub comes out in a flashy way. She has a sinister expression and cuts off Goblin's face with just one swing. Dean leaves this side to her. She goes ahead and deals with monsters in deadly ways, and takes them out one by one. But soon she sees she is disappearing and there is just one Goblin left. Then realizes Dean is also fighting. He acquired combat ability, a flaming coil from the medium demon he dealt with, and shoves it into a Goblin, but the Goblin reverts back because it is also a fire type and his flaming coil does not affect it. Another Goblin comes to attack him from back and Monty steps in to save him. She throws magical stones at the Goblin. These are normal stones but prepared with special ingredients to condense magic flames. Dean has also cut down a small Goblin on his side. A large Goblin is up ahead and rushes towards the Dean. Dean somehow blocks its attack and can feel it is struggling for its life. He has to face a huge Goblin and a snail. But Monty arrives and asks him to deal with the Goblin where she will face this snail. She is good at fighting with her hammer and hits the snail, releasing her magical fire, but she observes the snail does not have any effect of magic attack. Dean clarifies to her that snail can only avoid magic damage by hiding her shell and using Moon Mirage that he saw using Emo on her. For now, she has to dodge snail's attacks. Monty does the same and jumps off to avoid snail's fluid but sees the snail's target is Dean. She alerts him about an incoming fluid blow, however, he was actually for this precise moment. He slides through under Goblin and lets it get attacked by the fluid attack, and when the Goblin is inflicting Slime's attack, Dean pierces through its body using his sword. Now what's left is a snail who seems terrified. Monty runs after her and corners her using her flames around the snail and then throws Snail above using a hammer. Subsequently, Dean runs his sword through Snail using his burning flaming coil. They both fists bump each other and then Dean loses strength in his body. She requests him to care for himself. He won't be able to keep up if it continues, but he can do such dumbass things in front of her so she can die with him. Dean intends to become an adventurer, worthy of her. He gets up and they both see their ranks. Dean has increased up to the 20th level and has acquired 2 skills. He is so excited because money would not be a problem now. When he becomes used to fighting these D-tier monsters, he would solo them. However, higher level of death rates are found among adventurers of this level because these adventurers get confidence in leading the primary ranks and most adventurers do not level up. He asks Monty about her status and learns she has upgraded from 7th to 12th. It seems my points went to her. She cutely turns to him with her busty chest and asks him if he wants to check it by himself, but he turns to the other side and says they should not use them on other people. However, Dean is curious if the snail has a fight bone, and turns out she has this bone and he retrieves it. They return to the city of Romanburg. Dean submits 1 white magic bone, 2 each from goblins and hobgoblins, and receives 80k Timmies in return. He has managed to get the monthly salary of a courier just in 1 day with this expedition. There is risk involved, but no one can imagine the price comparison of retrieved items with courier income, and there is also Golden Mimai's fight bone left. He did not want to bring it back though because it was huge to carry, but Monty insisted that she would use refined magic to make it smaller and it could also be turned into magic-resistant equipment. She can't let go of this item, which is worth 1.5 lakh Timmies. Even Beelzebub wanted to have its taste. In Guild, Beelzebub in sword form says that after receiving such a huge amount, he can feast on anything with his heart's desire content, and she asks him what if they buy cow meat. He fantasizes cow meat that younger calf meat provides the ideal fat-to-meat ratio for maximum tenderness. The receptionist is observing him and wonders if he is talking to himself. He readily runs to get calf meat and the receptionist at back finds him a weirdo. He is out with Beelzebub in the shopping district, which is flamboyant in comparison to the gloomy slums. The military government office is here. there are plenty of stores aimed at big shots and the army, so paving and water distribution have also to be in check. It attracts a lot of people to start a business, but there is also fierce competition which results in the closing of businesses of some people. Beelzebub is impressed with competition and says that's how competition should be, its natural weaklings are expelled. While passing through town, they listen to a man begging before police officers to get his money back. It's all he has for his wife's treatment. But those officers do not flinch and even have a weird expression. They are charging him because he is not paying taxes to open his business here, as he is under a contractual obligation to pay taxes. If he needs money that much, his daughter could help them by being a hooker. The people around them gossip that there were no such taxes when they opened their shops, and since Marty became the Magus officer, everything has been hard for them. The officers turn to them and they get involved in their professions. Dean wants to leave as soon as possible before the officers notice him, but he had to say it. Immediately those officers call him from back. He turns to them and they ask what his business is here. He hesitatingly tells him that he has come to buy Moscow cow meat. One officer points in another direction, saying its stop is on another side. They find him suspicious and take his bag, which has a pack of cash, which is more suspicious. They even find him similar to the guy who is accused of stealing happening there. They decide to take him to the office building for further investigation, so bind his hands. A certain man named Fyodor arrives on the scene and Dean seems to know him. He acts as a witness and says that he saw Dean exchanging money at the guild. The officers don't believe him and accuse Dean must be having sold out stolen items. There are ways of hiding the tracks of crimes. Dean starts to sweat because he did something like this a few days ago. Fyodor becomes serious and whispers something to the officer which completely changes their attitude, and they leave immediately. Dean asks him what he said to those soldiers and learns Fyodor just gave them a threat. They were not going to take him to court and would solve the case by themselves. Since they were supposed to report to the office for this kind of investigation, he asked them that he would report the matter to the army. Fyodor teaches Dean the rule number 1 of adventurers, which is never to let those soldiers doubt him. He has to keep his head up and it won't cause suspicions. Dean is highly fascinated by Fyodor and has not heard of these rules for ages. He is the adventurer Dean respects the most. He is famous for his kill shot using the wind magic and magical spear, and there are few people in the city with such skills. Dean respects him not for his power but for his character. The scene shifts to the past when Dean met first time with Fyodor-san. Dean counts coins he received from his adventure and curses his fellow adventurers because they gave him the lesser amount that was not in the contract. He listens to guys surrounding Fyodor and thanks him for helping them. He was always famous for helping others, inviting them to his party, and giving them tips for fighting. When Dean is enviously looking at Fyodor, he arrives at Dean and invites him on an adventure. They go on the journey together where Fyodor advises him to get bone around the magic bone as they are also worth of money. He also had a time when he had a shortage of money, so he collected his fair share of waste bones. It happened when he was around the age of Dean and looked up to Zario's swordsman. Dean is impressed that Fyodor also went through a scarcity of money and he also looked up to Zario's like him. The scene shifts to the present where Fyodor's sight falls on Dean's sword and asks what's with the magical blade. Dean tells him that Mani has forged it for him, and this makes Fyodor say that Dean must protect Mani. Dean gets anxious and says they have no such relations. Suddenly they listen to a lady saying they are noisy. If they keep going like this, she will take her leave. Fyodor knows her and introduces her to Dean. She is Eda-chan, a descendant of the Narek clan. She had some problems in the city, so he brought her here. The Narek clan is the strongest of Legman clans, holding inhuman powers from contracts made with creatures of the underworld. People try to use them as magical equipment and let them go through areas full of monsters. Eda menacingly glares at Fyodor and forbids him not to expose other affairs. Dean wonders why she is tagging along with Fyodor even though she has a nomadic tribe. Fyodor informs that he plans to take Eda to the magic den tomorrow. He will teach her the basic practices when in magical mazes. There is also top-secret information that C-tier crystal demon Salas have been spotted over there. He invites Dean to join them. In this way, he will be able to see how much Dean has grown. Eda interrupts them to say it is not what she was told. She is grateful to him for teaching him the basics of being an adventurer, but she is against taking a low-level civilian with them. Dean comes in a rage and shouts at her that she has been rude to Fyodor ever since she came, even though he is the one helping her. But unexpectedly Eda swiftly moves and gives a hard blow to his stomach, through which he flies far, hitting the wall and loses consciousness. Eda seems apologetic because she has not been able to interact with anyone outside of Narek clan. Dean comes to his senses and stands beside Eda. Fyodor teaches them the adventurer rule number 2, which is to be on good terms with fellows. If they fight among themselves, then being an adventurer is impossible. So he asks them to shake hands with each other. They have no choice left, so they embarrassingly join hands. They get on the horse-drawn carriage and Dean is thrilled to ride on it. They have to get Crystal Demon Salas before anyone, otherwise it causes them trouble. He is a very troublesome demon with mastery of forging arts and matter. Dean has to keep in mind that demons are generally stronger than magic creatures of the same rank. He might be classified as the C rank, but his power can be incomparable. Fyodor plans to let them fight with that demon because his goal is to level them up. If it gets hard, Fyodor with level 37 will come and defeat him. Dean reaches his hand to Edda saying, "Let's work together," but Edda is so sensitive and asks him not to get closer. She will make yesterday's punch like a joke. Fyodor makes them attentive and fills them in that Cerberus Fong is also going to show up there. These are adventurer hunters who seek magic gear. Some dead people also have been shown up in the past few years, but there is no physical evidence provided. There is little information that they are known as a trio of criminals who use 3 different magic objects to destroy their enemies. It is rumored it is a skill that does not leave first-class adventures. Fyodor's rival, Adarata the poison spider, was also taken by them. She was not an easy target to take down, and they must have used a surprise attack. Fyodor refers to adventurers that they can't make a living while being afraid. Since he has brought both of them, he will protect both of them. Dean replies positively in a casual way, but Edda diverts her eyes and replies to him in a badass way to look after his own business. He should not underestimate Narek clan. Dean says that she can hide her blush and has to continue. She gets up, asking why she would blush for someone like Fyodor. She immediately invites him into the fight to settle this, and Dean also agrees to fight with her on one condition: if he wins, she will have to apologize to Fyodor. They stop by a location to have lunch. Dean has his face swollen because he got hit by Edda, and with that face, he says he will cook, but they don't have any pots and ingredients. Fyodor asks him to rest assured and takes out a key which opens a box in the sky. It is a paradox where he can store his luggage, and he takes out all the essential ingredients and materials. The next is Dean's duty to cook ogre chicken pilaf. He professionally cuts the vegetables, boils them along with the ogre chicken, and melts butter, flour, and milk together to add to the mix. When it gets to the right consistency and thickness, then he adds cheese and rice, and lastly, sprinkles right amount of grated mandrake. He puts the lid on and keeps it heating until he can see bruising. And it's done. It looks very mouth-watering and filled with rich taste. Fyodor takes a bite and gets thrilled. He shows his relief that he brought Dean for right. But Edda has a problem with it too and says it takes them so much time. He can just grill the meat and drink milk as it is. She taunts him and asks rhetorically if he has come here to play. Dean is also stirred up and is about to say. Fyodor cuts them with his rule number 3, which is dining with each other is understanding each other. They have to listen that adventurers' lives are always at risk and don't know if they will live in the next moment or not. That is why he wants to enjoy his meal with his friends. He relaxes the mood and asks Edda if Dean's dish is not delicious. She does not reply upright and says it's not bad. Dean is pleased and appreciates that Fyodor is a good mediator, and when he is about to take a bite, he listens to Beelzebub, who asks him where's her share. It creates a difficult situation for Dean, and he somehow manages to feed her while hiding behind a wall. They reach the magic den where a lot of goblins roam around. Dean uses his sword and slashes the goblins which come in his way. A goblin gets scared and tries to run, but Edda steps forward and slashes him. It impresses Dean. Fyodor appreciates them and tells Dean that his strength is fine, but he needs to be decisive and should kill goblin in one attack. Dean takes a sigh of relief that he didn't get caught, and the Sword of Gluttony is quite hard to use and it can only steal 1 skill per swing. It might be suspicious if he takes too long in battles. He wants to tell it about it to Fyodor, but not to Edda, as he still doesn't trust her. Fyodor appreciates Edda that he expected nimble judgment and a decisive blow from a Narek. He is jealous of her because, at this age, she mastered the technique where battle energy is used explosively and turned into a combat technique of hyperspeed movement called Instant Cut. Fyodor says to Dean that they also should work on it, and Edda looks him with a side eye. He notices her gaze, but when he looks back she diverts her gaze. It irritates him and picks a fight, but she remains calm. Fyodor sarcastically says that he didn't expect them to be so close. The scene shifts to the 2nd floor. Fyodor says they have to investigate the surroundings and avoid unwanted creatures. Fyodor shows them a liquid substance that is a zombie's mucus. All zombies are tough and walk in groups, and they have to be cautious. Things would have been different if they had a tracking specialist. Dean diverts his eyes because he is keeping his secret of sensing Odo. Later, they keep walking as Fyodor-san told them. All of his adventurer rules are useful. Dean notices Eda's expression that she doesn't seem paying attention and is lost in some thoughts. They enter the 3rd floor and see a girl lying on the ground with blood spilled on her body. Dean uses his secret sensor ability to see the area and tries to stop Fyodor, who worriedly rushes to help her and carries her. Dean saw 2 men hiding, but he was a bit late. Before he takes any action, the girl Fyodor is carrying jumps off and uses her dagger to create an earth swap. It is sucking all of them on the ground. She laughs hysterically and says she got these idiots. Her 2 colleagues also show up, and then Fyodor realizes they might be the infamous trio of criminals, Cerberus Fong. Those criminals have pride in being famous with the cool name. They act cocky and feel lucky they have caught a wind traveler. One of their comrades, a fatso, seems the leader and seriously comes forward, wanting them to stop chit-chatting. He activates his skill, Petit Stone Bullet, which creates large boulders of rock flying in the air and directs them towards Fyodor. However, Fyodor keeps his coolness and surprisingly he blocks the rock's attack through his skill, Blast, which creates a tornado-like gale sharp enough that cut through anything. There is air pressure in the surrounding and that fatso cannot believe his rocks crumbled easily. Fyodor directs the gale towards Fatso, who runs outward with horrific expressions, but Fyodor's gales outdo him and pierces through the right center of his body. Other criminals are also shocked he is dead in a few seconds and have weird expressions. Fyodor makes his comrades attentive with Rule 8, which is never to show mercy to hostile enemies. Another criminal guy shouts like every guy who chants his skill when going to hit his opponents, but before he takes any action, Fyodor slashes his neck in an instant. Fyodor's Rule 10 is to eliminate one before he makes a move. Only the last one remains. She is cornered and says she would do anything and quietly go to jail, but Fyodor has no mercy for her and stabs her right there using his spear and chanting his rule number 11 that never dance to his enemy's tune. Fyodor turns to Dean and Eda asking if they are fine. Dean seems to have something going on in his mind. Fyodor says if wants to feel something about it, he must do it after K**ling, but it would just help him. They have to defeat the crystal demon and report about it later. They enter the 3rd floor and are chased by some monsters. They somehow dodge them and take breaths. Dean accuses Eda that she got involved with those beasts first, which is why it happened. Eda seems to agree that she wanted to just hunt who was separated from the pack. She aims to level up before going to hunt the one on a higher level. Dean does not seem to understand her as she does not seem apologetic. She went there and Beast called its other friends, and if it had listened to Fyodor it would not have happened. She grabs his shirt from his neck and yells at him that she wants to become stronger, unlike a lazy guy like him. When she is nagging him, Fyodor tells her not to use the magic sword she has. It would be a B-tier sword and would be a burden to carry. But she declines bluntly because it belongs to her and doesn't want to discuss it. Now Dean feels sorry and apologizes for blaming her, and it makes her blush. She goes ahead saying she did not want to match his snail's pace. Soon, Dean senses something terrifying and stops her. She turns to him to bicker again but senses someone ahead. They all come forward and see an impaled adventurer K***led with an iron nail piercing through his body. But before they analyze the situation, Crystal Demon shows up welcoming them at the art exhibition of death, and then they see there are also other adventurers with hooked up bodies. He considers those adventurers foolish who dared to challenge him. He laughs sinisterly that he enjoys the facial expressions of those who die by his hands. Dean is terrified and then hears Beelzebub, who says Crystal Demon is vulgar as its appearance, slaughtering randomly even for not feeding. She wants Dean to eliminate him. Fyodor makes them attentive and asks them to act as planned, and he will get involved when things don't feel right. Crystal Demon seems to admire art and decides his next piece will be a sculpture that pours blood from every pore. After saying it, he activates his skill, Poisonous Gas, and spreads it everywhere. To deflect the attack, Fyodor creates his gale with strong boundless pressure that even Eda and Dean cannot stand firmly. Dean has nothing to do for now, so he uses him to analyze Demon status and learns he is at level 33 and has got a lot of deadly spells. When Gale is lowered down, Demon sees they have survived his attack, so he decides to change his plan and attack Eda first. Saying it, he pulls out several doves using Trick Dove and directs them towards her. It's time for Eda to shine. She pulls out her blade from the sheath and deals with incoming doves at high speed, K***ling them one by one. She is running and slashing, but then her ankle sprains and a dove is about to come hitting her. Dean appears ahead and eliminates it. He does not know what happened, but he also wants to become stronger and asks her to work together. She gets up and they both stand in a dashy way. Demon is annoyed with them that the filthy humans are still standing and insulting him. He activates his other skill and brings out several pointed rocks from a wall and directs at them. They both act together and dodge his attacks. Etta sneakingly plunges towards the demon to slash him, but he outdone her and hits her hard. She has injured her arm, but she has not lost her will, saying Nerix are not such weaklings. Demon asks them not to underestimate the nimblest aria of demons. The attacks are ceased because they are being charged. Etta acts tough and tries to stand as she will attack him again, but Dean comes forward calling her Baka Girl. He does not care if these are Nerix's teachings or if she is acting tough, but they have decided to act together and he won't sit and watch her getting hurt. She has a glum expression. Dean energetically says that there is a way to get through here. Demon finds it creepy that they are in such a condition and still pretend friendship. He has recharged his attack and fires at them. They both move ahead without any strategy, and then she makes a pose for Dean to jump in the air, taking her sword as base to jump. Dean flies in the air and activates his skill Moon Mirage, which tricks Demon into thinking that he is hitting Dean, but instead, Dean hits the demon. Demon can feel his power being sucked up and pulls out Dean by hitting him back. Still, he is focusing on Dean and Etta shoots her sword at him, piercing through his face. They both fell down with Demon defeated. Etta appraises Dean that she thought he is still a mere portar, but it seems like he can do a thing or two. Dean reaches his hand toward her, thanking her, but she averts with blushing and says Nerix doesn't do such clingy things, and she is just saying he did more than expected. Fyodor appears congratulating them for defeating the monster by themselves. A thought clicks Dean's mind that if he had not used Moon Mirage, then Fyodor would have helped him. Fyodor asks Etta to collect the demon core under Dean's supervision, but Dean interrupts them, asking if he is serious. She is strong and is enough for her value in the party. He can collect the core by himself quickly because she is injured right now. But Fyodor makes suspicious expressions and says one should learn everything. Dean does not seem to agree, but Fyodor asserts him to hurry up and do it. Dean and Etta both get involved in acquiring demon core. He teaches her to skin the outer layer, which makes it easy to collect the core with bare hands. While they are at it, he recollects the events of what happened today. He wonders about the trio of criminals, if they were not supposed to be strong enough to eliminate the first-class teams but got defeated effortlessly. It is even strange that Fyodor asked Etta to collect the demon core. She could have stayed in the party